The world changed. Everyone would turn into the last animal they ate. Someone ate a bowl of beef noodles and transformed into an ancient black dragon with insane combat power. Someone gnawed on a fried chicken drumstick and became a phoenix reborn from the flames. But in my last life, I casually ate a plate of braised chicken and rice, and only awakened useless singing, dancing, and rap skills. In that beast-ridden survival of the fittest apocalypse, I barely lasted before dying a miserable death. Now I had been reborn on the eve of the disaster, knowing every truth about the coming apocalypse. I planned every step carefully, swearing I would stand at the very top of this beast-shifting world. The first target I locked onto was the owl. It was born with extreme night vision, and its hearing was far sharper than most creatures in the world. As long as I could gain the owl's talent, I could completely ignore the dangers of darkness and become the unshakable king of the night in the apocalypse. The second must-have was the electric eel. Its body could release a powerful current of over 800 volts. In my last life, a beast shifter used the electric eel's talent to run wild through the apocalypse, and no one dared mess with him. Once I made up my mind, I immediately searched online for all kinds of insanely powerful creatures. Then one ordinary-looking ant instantly caught my attention. Regular ants can lift objects 400 times their own weight, and the bullet ant is a top-tier monster among ants, ranked among the world's 10 most venomous creatures. The owl could give me extreme night vision and heightened hearing for perception. The electric eel could let me control powerful high-voltage lightning. And the bullet ant would let me inherit an ant's insane strength, while unlocking a powerful bite force and deadly venom. This time, I had combat power, perception, and venom all covered. But I was still missing the most important thing: defense. In the brutal apocalypse, if your defense was weak, then no matter how strong your attacks were, sooner or later other beast shifters would hunt you down, or mutated beasts would eat you alive. Since I had been given another life, I would turn myself into an all-around hexagon war god with no weaknesses. When it came to defense, should I choose a turtle or a crocodile? In my last life, I saw someone eat crocodile meat before shifting. Afterward, his whole body was covered in crocodile scales, and his strength, bite force, and physical defense were absurdly powerful. Someone online also recommended the horseshoe crab, saying its shell was as hard as natural armor and could even bounce off regular bullets. But horseshoe crabs are protected endangered animals, so there was no legal way to get one. I gave up on that option right away. While I was thinking it over, I suddenly remembered the tardigrade, a creature so overpowered it was almost ridiculous. As long as I ate enough tardigrades before the disaster arrived, I could inherit its immortal body. This creature is said to survive forever as long as the sun itself doesn't burn out. It can withstand extreme heat, extreme cold, and crushing pressure. Even if it gets thrown into outer space and exposed to nuclear radiation, as long as it's not at the center of a nuclear blast, it can come out unharmed. More importantly, tardigrades can be found all over the world. Damp soil and the water film on moss are full of them, making them the easiest overpowered trump card to obtain. But then came the problem. If even outer space couldn't kill a tardigrade, how was I supposed to process it for use? I immediately looked up professional science articles online and finally figured out its weakness. Tardigrades are transparent, and when they encounter harsh environments, they automatically dehydrate and curl into a barrel-like shape. Scientists once placed them in extreme conditions of 150 degrees C heat and minus 200 degrees C cold. After returning to normal temperature, they still revived. Even atomic bomb-level radiation and 6 times the pressure of the Mariana Trench couldn't kill them. But they had one fatal weakness. A UV sterilizing lamp could kill them completely after 15 minutes of exposure, and within 24 hours they would lose all activity. High-temperature steam and open flame could also wipe them out. After getting all the key information, I immediately raced against time and got to work. There were only 3 days left before the beast-shifting catastrophe. I had to hurry and prepare my own beast-shifting ingredients. First, I ordered a microscope and a UV sterilizing lamp online. Killing tardigrades with UV light was the safest method, and it helped avoid losing the tiny bodies. The outskirts of my town were full of farmland and mountain woods, with moss growing everywhere. It was the perfect place for tardigrades to gather. I immediately went into the mountains to collect large amounts of moss and lichen, preparing to screen for tardigrades once I got back. On my way to gather supplies, a salamander more than 10 centimeters long crawled out of the grass by the roadside. I suddenly remembered that this creature came with an incredible self-healing talent and the ability to regrow lost limbs. I quickly went online to ask people and got a clear answer. Salamanders could regenerate almost endlessly and had extremely strong vitality. I was instantly thrilled. The tardigrade's immortal body, combined with the salamander's limb regeneration ability, 2 overpowered talents stacked together, would make me nearly invincible in the apocalypse. I first brought the salamander home and took care of it properly. Then I rode my motorcycle to the county mall and bought a UV sterilizing lamp. I also prepared highly elastic clothing, so it wouldn't rip apart if my body grew massively after the beast shift. At the same time, I messaged major breeding bloggers on short video platforms, planning to buy owls, electric eels, and bullet ants at high prices. By the time I finished everything, it was already evening. I grabbed a simple dinner outside, then went to the school to borrow a microscope. I also got a full set of lab equipment, including beakers and droppers, to make it easier to separate and collect tardigrades later. Following an online tutorial, I soaked the moss for 24 hours, squeezed out the water, dropped it onto a glass slide, and observed it under the microscope. Maybe it was the luck from being reborn, but on my very first observation, I found a tardigrade about 0.1 millimeters long. This tiny creature was completely invisible to the naked eye. To collect several hundred of them would take a lot of time and effort. After working for most of the day, I only found 12. It was probably because the moss hadn't been soaked long enough, and most of the tardigrades still hadn't separated from it. But as long as the method worked, that was enough. I didn't need to waste all my time collecting tardigrades. Just then, a message popped up on my phone. Zhou Jiming, an insect breeding blogger with over 100,000 followers from ant content, had replied to my message. Early the next morning, I first checked on the salamander I was keeping. It was still alive and healthy, so there was no need to process and refrigerate it yet. Then I went to the appointment on time and arrived at Zhou Jiming's private breeding base. The glass tanks in the base were filled with all kinds of niche insects, and in the corner, I spotted exactly what I needed. Bullet ants. Zhou Jiming treasured his bullet ants. Even the dead ones were turned into specimens and carefully preserved. I got straight to the point and asked to buy 50 live bullet ants, plus some dead ones as well. Without another word, I transferred the money. Zhou Jiming secretly regretted quoting too low a price, while also wondering why I even wanted dead insects. While wandering around the base, 2 beetles that looked like chunks of iron caught my eye. Zhou Jiming explained that these were ironclad beetles, known as the insects with the hardest shells in nature. They could withstand nearly 40,000 times their own body weight and pressure. If scaled up proportionally, their physical defense would be the ceiling of the natural world. Hearing that, I was ecstatic. Wasn't this the prototype of the iron-armored beast that swept through the apocalypse in my last life? I immediately added the ironclad beetles to my must-buy list. Zhou Jiming saw that I was determined to get them, so he jacked up the price on the spot, saying these niche species weren't cheap and often cost thousands or even tens of thousands. After some bargaining, I finally spent 20,000 yuan to buy the 2 ironclad beetles. At this point, I only had a little over 10,000 yuan left, and I still needed money for the electric eel and the owl. So I took the chance to ask Zhou Jiming about where to buy an electric eel. It just so happened that he knew a friend who kept rare aquatic animals. That friend had recently bought an electric eel but couldn't keep it alive. Now the eel was weak and wouldn't last much longer. When the seller heard someone was willing to pay a high price, he quoted 5,000 yuan. Zhou Jiming flipped it right away and doubled the price, asking me for 10,000. Seeing that time was getting tighter, I didn't bother bargaining with him and agreed to the deal on the spot. Zhou Jiming secretly mocked me for being a fool with too much money, but he had no idea that once the apocalypse arrived, no amount of cash would be anything more than scrap paper. We soon arrived at the seller's place and confirmed that the one in the tank was indeed a purebred electric eel.